And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We're here with Scotty and Aaron from the Outer Roses podcast to talk Portland Timbers 2024 season. Guys, how you doing? Thanks so much for being here.
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're all right, man. We're all right. It's been a long grind. I think we're only 5 teams away from finishing all 29. So, and we started last Saturday. So we've knocked out like 3 or 4 a day for the last 7 days. It's been a lot, but it's been fun.
Dude, I applaud you guys. Like we struggle to get like a podcast in every week or two. So that's impressive. Yeah. Mad respect.
Appreciate y'all. Yeah, we decided with year 5 we were gonna give it our best for as long as we could, and uh, I think we're enjoying it. That's what I'll say. I don't regret it just yet, but we'll see how that goes. I'm also here with Connor. I'm gonna remember for like the first time in about 8 episodes to bring you in. Connor, how you doing?
Yeah, I don't even know if you introduced me in the last episode,
I
honestly.
definitely did.
Thinking
I
about it.
definitely didn't, and that's on me. Um, we got lots to talk about here with Portland Timbers. A lot of really cool additions, a couple of interesting losses, some players who might be able to break out. One big question for the team and a predicted finish. But before we do any of that, of course, we got to go to Scarf for the week, and I'm going to send it to our guests. I'll go Aaron first. Aaron, what are you rocking?
Okay, so I used to live actually in the Seattle area. So this is actually one of our supporter groups, Timbers Army Covert Ops, or TACO. So these are Seattle-based Timbers fans. We've actually, guys, one of the things we're going to do a little more this year is to do some outreach and showcasing of regional supporters groups across the U.S. So representing people I used to live near up in the Seattle area.
Nice, nice. That's really cool, and that's got to be pretty interesting being a Portland supporter up in Seattle. I can't imagine that that was very easy for you.
No, it's actually funny because I actually worked with a guy who was a massive Impact fan from Montreal, and
Oh
so
wow.
it's like we always kind of had like solidarity of like we'd always talk like hey, there's at least two of us we can we can get
That's
through
awesome.
those, Yeah, but yeah, I did it for 8 years, and I actually started MLS, did the between Portland and Seattle for I guess 8 years. So yeah, it was a long time.
That's super cool. Yeah. Scotty, what do you got?
So I have in the theme of Seattle, I have an Aces 2.0 scarf here, if you've ever seen one of these. So if you don't know, Aces is any club except Seattle. And on the other side, it has I guess, the legit version of saying fuck Seattle without actually saying fuck Seattle. So, yeah, this is the one scarf that'll get confiscated if you go to CenturyLink wearing it. I've almost had it taken several times, so it generally just stays home now. but but yeah, we figured it was a good theme to at least display our displeasure, Seattle, on a podcast, right? So, we'll celebrate the good parts of it, right? Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely love that. I was hoping somebody was going to bring that out back in I think it was season 1. We interviewed Timber Joey during the lockdown. Yeah, it was MLS is back because y'all had gotten into the MLS is back final. We interviewed Timber
Yes.
Joey, and we asked him because I mean you could see I've got quite a few scarves on the wall here, and a lot of them relate to somebody we've interviewed before. And we asked him what scarf should we get, and no hesitation, he goes Aces scarves, no hesitation. And I was like, all right. I couldn't find one at the time, so I've got the one that I'm going to show off here in a second, but it's definitely on the list for the next edition. So, Connor, what are you rocking?
I don't have a Portland scarf, but I did not bring out a Seattle scarf, thank goodness. I'm going to bring out a scarf that's going to spoil one of my segments for later. It's going to be very obvious, and for those that don't know, you're going to find out in like 2 minutes. But I'm bringing out my Inter Miami scarf for a certain somebody new to the Portland Timbers this season.
All right,
Nice,
that's
nice.
he's very good at giving those away. I've shown out a lot of scarves over the last 220 episodes or so that we've done. This might be one of my favorites. So it is my Portland Timbers scarf, but the detail and design in it is just next level. So really nice detail mounted on one side. This Timbers in yellow and green on the other. The colors are great, and anybody who knows me and listens to the pod knows that my favorite part, the way you get bonus points on scarves for me is a meet in the middle scarf. And this one
Nice. Way
Did
to
I
do it
put
backwards.
I messed it up. I done messed it up. This one meets in the middle to form a tree.
It's still
If I
not
can
doing
get
it.
if I can get it. Hold on, I can do this. I know how to do this. There it is.
The audio listeners are loving this.
There we go. I think I did.
Nice.
There we go.
You got it. Yeah.
It meets in the middle to form a tree. So that's a big win for me. And it's different, right? Because a lot of the ones on the wall there meet in the middle to form the crest. But if you can do something different than the crest, big points. So definitely one of my favorites, even though it took me about 15 minutes to figure out how to show it off. But that's okay. Hopefully it doesn't take us 15 minutes to decide answers for some of our segments here. Look at that segment. That was awesome. 2024 Portland Timbers. We're looking at Phil Neville heading into his first coaching gig after being released from Inter Miami and assisting John Herdman in Canada. 10th in the West last year, 18th overall, 43 points, 11 wins, 13 losses, 10 draws, just barely missed the playoffs. I guess the first question is, how do we feel about the Phil Neville hire? Are we excited? Do we think he's going to do a good job?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I guess I've been more optimistic. It's kind of interesting to say that. I think there's definitely different takes of Portland fans for different reasons. Both for things on and off the pitch. I think it's interesting with Phil Neville. There's a potential big upside. He's actually the first MLS manager we're hiring that has MLS experience, which is kind of wild considering we've been a team now in the MLS for this is going to be our 13th season. I think I do the math here.
Yep.
But I mean, personally, I think there's a lot to be. There's a lot of upside, good experience. I personally feel just kind of the environment in Miami is very unique. That maybe with the roster issues they had, with not being able to get transfers and whatnot. I'm hoping he's going to get a good look here in Portland, but we'll see. I'm optimistic. It got pretty dire parts of last season under Gio, but yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a big shift. I think most people in Portland are kind of excited to see the team kind of change a bit. We've been so attacking focused, which is never a bad thing. But we're so attacking focused that we let our defensive side just collapse completely. So I think having someone like Phil come in and experience, international defender, knows what he wants to do with the system and the team, come in and actually shape it. I think it's a good time. It's a good time for us to do it, especially with, we have a few veteran players that are departing that we'll probably talk about some here in just a few minutes. But I think it's a good time for there to be kind of a bit of an overhaul with the roster and a change in the system. We'll see if Phil's up to the task.
Yeah, and you mentioned this mindset, the defensive mindset from the coach, but he's also been given a couple of tools to help fix that defense from last season. Very good additions coming in. And I'm sure we're going to name a whole bunch of them here, so I won't go through them. But I wanted to ask you guys on your thoughts on who your best addition was.
Yeah, so I think for me, Maxime Crépeau, talking about building out from the back. I think that's one of the things that I think we did a lot of complaining last season and probably season previous of just not great defense. And I'm a big believer in the philosophy of having a good goalkeeper and having good center backs is a great way to build your team out from the back. So I'm pretty excited with Crépeau. Loved him at Vancouver. Was a massive part of the LAFC title-winning season, only conceding 36 and 33 starts, that is. And I think obviously unfortunate picking up that injury in the MLS Cup final in 2022. Missed a lot of last season, and Hugo Lloris coming into LAFC, obviously, kind of made him surplus. So it's funny when we signed two other goalkeepers, kind of rebuilding our core. That day out that all his goalkeeper news broke, we're just like, man, if we could just sign Crépeau, this would just really make it. Within a couple of hours, it was unofficially official that we're going to get Crépeau. So first, probably only time in our lives we're going to sign 3 goalkeepers in a day. We're unofficially signed.
I hope so, at least. I don't think we're going to sign 3.
Yeah. So big on Crépeau, and obviously this close second. I think we've talked a lot about center back situation is Kamal Miller coming in from Inter Miami. Yeah, I think Crépeau for me.
Yeah, and I was actually going to second that, and then my I guess my choice would have been Kamal Miller, just because we've been in dire need of a center back for a very long time. Zach McGraw has been looking pretty good in there as a starter. Finally got his opportunity. It's really shown that I think he's going to be a very good long-term MLS defender. So to get him a partner in someone that he knows from his national team and knows MLS, which I think is a huge undervalued commodity in this league, is having that MLS experience in the defensive line. It's a very interesting league and a very tough league to learn. So to get someone that has that experience is huge. And it's something we probably haven't had since Matt Borchers came in. So that's kind of the way we've been looking at it. Talking offline is like we feel like this could be like that Borchers Ridgey combo, but the big difference is they're way younger. So that's the hope, is that this will be our center back pairing for quite a while.
Borchers, what a name! Love that one. Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned the 3 goalkeepers in a day. We do a series online, with our social media where we grade every off-season move coming in. So we make a little PowerPoint slide, and it's all done up. It's nice and pretty. And I remember typing out something about Trey Muse. We did Pantemis, we did Muse, and I'm like, there's a world right now where Trey Muse might be the number 1, because I didn't love Pantemis. I thought Ivicic was on the way out, and can't remember goalkeeper before. I thought it was a youth player. I'm like, oh, there's a world Trey Muse might be number 1. And then Maxime Crepeau signed. I'm like, there's a world where Trey Muse might be number 2. Like, it's crazy. so really, really quick pivots on that one. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a club sign 3 goalkeepers in that short of a time span, but you definitely got a good one there. And I'll build off of that. Because as a former goalkeeper myself, I'm legally obligated to stick up for the GK Union. So Maxime Crepeau is my pick. A unit, an absolute unit at LAFC in Vancouver before that. If it wasn't for the leg injury at the MLS Cup 2022, I think he has a legitimate shot at being a starter in the World Cup. Does he do better than what Canada did? I don't know. Probably not. But, I think that he would have had a good shot to do it, and that would have raised his stock, immensely. And you guys got a really good one in there. The GK room was full of uncertainty. I mean, the Ivicic drama, we went pretty deep into it, and a video we posted about what went wrong for the Portland Timbers on YouTube, and the Portland fans seem to love it. I don't know how it blew up, but about 3 weeks ago, it just started getting tons of views. And we did one of the big things that we dove into were off the field issues, and even just kind of the center of that. So to have somebody come in and really stabilize that position and know that there is no more confusion, you're always going to have a consistent guy, number 1. That is a really good feeling for a club. And I guess I'll throw it. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, 100%. I think the one thing that we're all really excited about is we have a bunch of young keepers, including Huntersol right now. I think he's still on the roster. Between Pantemis, Muse, and Solt, we have a great young core to learn from a veteran player in Crepeau. And eventually, when he does either move on, retire, whatever, there's a lot of good options there. So I think for the first time in probably since that same era, since Quaresy, we actually feel like we have a true number 1. We've had a lot of these guys are going to compete for the number 1 spot, but they're really number 2 guys. So yeah, we're really excited.
Good. No, and that's, like I said, it's nice to see that again. I remember the Quaresy days, and then if we're throwing it all the way back, the Jake Gleason days. That was one of my first my first dives into Portland Timbers with Jake Gleason, and I'm like, this dude's a world beater. I thought Jake Gleason was out of this world, and then I kind of came back down to earth, and all the Portland fans were like, yeah, he was kind of mid. I was like, okay.
We all thought he was good too. Don't worry.
Cool. At least I'm not the only one then, because I loved him. I thought it was great. But anyways, less on Jake Gleason, more on Connor Wright's best edition in this window.
Yeah, man, I bet you can't figure out who my best edition is. Yeah, it's Kamal Miller for me, and for me personally, I think Crepeau is a great addition, but it was unquestionably Kamal Miller for me. I mean, the dude is one of the best center backs in the league for a reason. And he may not have been at his absolute best when he was in Miami, but I think he can quickly get back to that, especially when he has a good defensive group around him as well. He was, when we did our Inter Miami episode, across the board unanimously, he was the biggest loss for all of us for Inter Miami. So it's easy to see why he would be the biggest gain then for Portland as well. I'm super excited to see the partnership he can create with McGraw for this upcoming season. I really think the two of them could be lethal at the center back position together. And I know you were talking about the the connection for the league experience to pair with Zach McGraw. But don't forget too, it's the Canadian experience as well, and throw in Kerpo, and
Yeah.
now you've got the Canadian trio in defense. I think that could also be a pretty nice boost for them as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the way I see it, it's not the Bermuda Triangle where things get lost. It's the Canadian Triangle. You throw service in there, and it's either getting cleaned up by McGraw, it's getting cleaned up by Miller, or it's getting claimed by Kerpo. It's a Canadian Triangle, baby. Everything
I
gets
like
lost.
that. The Canadian triangle where possession gets lost.
I like that.
Where
There's
do we,
been a
where
lot
do we
of
put in where do we put in something for trademarks? I want that written down.
I was gonna say there's been a lot of nicknames going around. The one I really like is the A team, like EH, the A team for
Oh, that's good.
That's
That's good.
clever.
I like that one a lot. Though. We'll see. We'll see what everybody decides on. But there's got to be some sort of.
I love that. A team sounds awesome. Connor stole my transition because what I was gonna say is when we did Inter Miami, Kamal Miller was across the board the biggest loss. But what I want to know is what Portland Timbers' biggest loss is. But since Connor stole that transition, I'm just gonna ask you guys straight up: who's the biggest loss you guys are gonna feel this year?
This was like a really tough one for us to figure out because this is the first off season. It feels like we haven't lost like a big piece, other than like maybe part of our hearts, and that's where we were going to go with Sebastian Blanco. He may not have put a lot of minutes in the last couple seasons. I think last year he only put in just a little bit above 400 minutes and only started like 2 games. So his on-field impact wasn't nearly as significant, and really should have been more for being a DP, right? So we're naturally going to gain from the fact that we're likely going to use that DP spot on someone else that can come in and actually contribute immediately. But it's tough losing Blanco after having him for so many years. Like he was a huge part of this team for 6-7 years in the end.
Yeah.
He went to 2 MLS Cup finals. Like, I mean, the dude did just about everything. He put the team on his back when he needed to. And I think the biggest thing the team's going to miss is like that spirit and that fire that he has. There's not a lot of that like on-field leadership and fire behind this team. So we'll have to see what Phil's going to do in terms of captaincy, where the leadership is really going to come from this group. But you kind of need that fire and that spice from Blanco. So excited he's moving back on to San Lorenzo and he's going to get to retire there and finish out his career. And, all the best to him. But I think that was probably the biggest loss, maybe outside of Miles Joseph as well.
Yeah. Well, it's Jimmy Chara too, but I think it's kind of thought what we were both saying about, we independently thought something similar on this was like we've almost gained 2 DP spots. I mean, that's one thing I think a lot of people realize is that Timbers pretty much played with one and sometimes no DPs in quite a few games last year. Vander had a lot of fitness issues, a couple suspensions in there. Jimmy Chara could just not stay fit, but I'm the same with Scotty on this with Blanco, but it's the same. Like he just didn't have that on-field, addition, but definitely off the field. And obviously great memories. We did a good little tribute, I think, on a couple episodes of ours back, for Sebastian Blanco. But yeah, second Blanco on our biggest loss.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Connor, what do you got?
I got the exact same thing. I took a look at the list of players that had left for Portland that I didn't really see much in terms of a loss based on who was contributing last season. So I went the exact same route. I went for the guy that I felt would probably hurt the most in the heart for a lot of Portland fans, a club legend like Blanco. But yeah, I'm of the same mindset that I think freeing up that designated player spot is definitely a huge benefit to the club. So I think it made sense to move on at that time. But yeah, it's still going to obviously hurt to see him move on and go finish up his career somewhere else. But I agree. I think freeing up those spots will be super helpful for the team moving forward. And I don't want to dive too much into that because I might be talking about that in a later part of the episode. But yeah, I'm on the same wavelength there.
All right, I'll be that guy. I'll break the trend. I agree. I agree that Blanco is probably going to be a big loss for you guys. But I'd like to, maybe you guys can clear this up for me on your end, Scotty and Aaron. But Frank Boley comes in, gets 7 goals in 1,500 minutes on a brand new team with not a ton of like really great talent around him. and they just kind of moved on from him. Now they're going to rely on Felipe Mora, a couple of unproven depth pieces, but I thought he was solid. And I don't know if you necessarily will miss him next year, depending on the way Phil Neville wants to play, but I'm kind of surprised he didn't come back. Was there something that the neutral fan is missing here? Was there something behind the scenes we don't know about?
Well, we talked a little bit about this actually. I think our last episode about Oli because we both really like. I think similar to Armenteros, we were more of a pit stop in his career, kind of that like, hey, get out of a bad situation, go strut myself somewhere, and then go earn a contract back in the year. That's kind of the way we originally thought he was coming to. But really, the biggest problem was we didn't use him correctly at all. Like the entirety of last season, like he is definitely not the. I wouldn't even say like a target striker. He's more of like the guy that's going to run off the ball, make runs deep, and try to go one on one with the keeper. Uh, and really, we just didn't give him the kind of service or the kind of style that really fits what he needed to do. A lot of those goals that he was scoring, he's having to come in late in games when it's like bad scrambles, like people are playing all sorts of weird positions. You know what I mean? And he still found a way to get the ball in the net. He did have the yips for quite a while when he was here. That was the biggest complaint I think from a lot of fans was he had a lot of opportunities, or he at least had a lot of golden opportunities and he didn't put them away. But like you kind of just felt the second he was going to put like one or two away in a match, it was just going to explode. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sad we weren't able to keep him, but I also get like I wouldn't want to go sign somewhere and have him like misuse me for most of the season. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably more of where it went. I don't know if you think the same, Eric, but
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I think it's interesting. I think there was also a mutual, like I don't think if he declined the option, he might have been given an option, declined it, whereas like mutually declined between club and player, which was kind of actually unique for us. Usually, it's not it doesn't go that way. But no, I mean, great player, and it is a shame. It is definitely very similar to Armenteros, so and particularly I think we were surprised that more. I was lot last year. I was really worried. We have a real bad history of players essentially just doing their knees and ruining their careers, coming here. That how Mora was really going to kind of to come back, and that I thought we were a little surprised about. Foley was going to be the man, but yeah, definitely had some moments. But yeah, had the yips, and we just didn't use them as well as we could have.
Nat Borchers, Samuel Armenteros, man, we're bringing these guys back for an MLS history episode. These guys got all the they're pulling everything out. I absolutely love it. With these players moving on, there are definitely going to be some holes in there in the roster. Who is a player that we might want to keep an eye on who might break out this year? Maybe a youth player coming up from the academy who's going to get some bench minutes, or somebody who was new last year who might break in the team this year.
Yeah, I think the player I'm at least looking out for is Anthony, one of the wingers we brought in. He's a U22 player. He came from First Flight Portuguese division team, if I remember correctly. He's got a ton of speed. He seems to play a really good game. He's just young, and he hasn't had a ton of opportunities. Like last year was not the best opportunity to kind of throw him into. And I think towards the end of the season, I think our last home game, he got like his first start. And he actually put in a pretty good like 70-minute shift or so. I think there's a lot of promise. I think where he might really fill the gap is having someone that is willing to take someone on one on the outside, and a guy that can drift inside when we need someone to kind of pull over and play center striker because the field is shifting. It looks like when we've seen like a lot of his older highlights back in the day, he plays more of that kind of floating role from like left to central if needed, which is something that Blanco used to do a lot, making those runs at back post, making runs to the penalty spot, Mora, whoever goes front post, pulls some defenders off. We need someone that can fit that system. And considering the lack of depth we have at the outside right now, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. Even if we do bring in like another like DP signing that they keep kind of rumoring, I think he's got the biggest potential this season in just the amount of opportunity he has this year. Because there's really nobody like really pushing him at that spot.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's interesting too. It kind of plays on where the team is going to go shopping. It was it's just said the other day that they're looking at a attacking DP and they're going to go for a striker number 9, which we sort of said, well, that must really put a lot of stock into into Anthony. They are going to maybe go with another young DP attacking player, not just saying winger, but we didn't get a lot of good looks for him last year, and it was just such a mess. Yeah, I think when he came into last season, of the little bits that we did see of like a lot of promise. Moreno I think showed a little differently, but I think Moreno, you saw his class. I mean, Anthony could have a really big impact, which is exciting. I think considering that we're going to get some, maybe like a big, apparently a top DP. That's what Phil Neville saying we're going to sign. To kind of create a bit more space for Moreno. I think had some. You guys didn't talk about this previously of off the field issues and whatnot. I think that Moreno at one point put a transfer request in, but seems to be very switched on and very engaged. There's a great opportunity for Anthony to explode in this team, particularly with Vander in his second season getting good service. Yeah.
Like that. And I like that because it's also my pick. From what it looked like, it was like a 3.2 million pound transfer fee. But because it was so late, 250 minutes last season, it seems like the sky's the limit for this kid, especially as we mentioned with Blanca moving out and you mentioned Moreno on one side and Yimi Chara going out. It's like they're trusting this kid. They trust that this guy is going to be the next guy. So definitely one to keep an eye on. I think he comes in and for the good of Portland Timbers, I think he comes in and he is one of those 7 goal, 10 assist guys. That'd be great for him. Now, does he get there right now? Maybe not, right? A little younger than most and little inexperienced, but it's quite clear they paid that money because they thought he was going to be something special. So definitely interested to see what he can do when given the chance, right? Mr. Wright.
Mr. Barnacle.
What about you?
Would you believe it if I
Yes.
said that I also had Anthony?
Yes, because you take all of my notes all the time. You literally just copy.
Because I do. I also have Anthony. I think even regardless of if he ends up being a starter this season or not, whether it's Asprilla and Moreno that end up being the starting wingers, it's still going to be a huge bump up in minutes for him, just considering all the competitions that MLS teams have to play in across the entire season. He's going to get plenty of rotational minutes. And as you were mentioning before, the winger depth isn't exactly super deep right now. So, if it's an injury here or just a couple of rotation games there, I think the minutes will add up quickly. And as we were talking about before coming to Portland, he was playing in the Portuguese top division. That's a top 6 league in the world, arguably top 5, and played 2,400 minutes for a top 5 team in that division. I mean, that's definitely not something to sleep on. And I think that's why you see Portland dropping 3.2 million to bring him in. It's a big money fee for a player that has big potential. So I definitely think with more minutes in Portland, now with an off season under his belt, things are lining up for him to have a much bigger year this year.
Yeah, it'll be one to watch for sure because at that young age, we've seen lots of players be successful. We've also seen a lot of people with that age not integrate well, not do well in another country, and it turns sour relatively quickly, which we would never like to see. So definitely something to look at. But for our friends over at Outer Roses, it's time to ask the big question. So what are you guys asking of this team still? What's still on your mind that hasn't been answered, or are you going to watch through the rest of the season, with that question in mind?
Yeah, I'm going to go with like a very big, I'll say philosophical question. And I think, to me, this also goes in perspective, kind of Timbers history of where this team is with a new manager. And the question is can Phil Neville create an identity that A, gets results, and B, wins fans over? And I think that it's a bit of a funny one to say it in that context, but one of the big things of Phil Neville coming here was not having, I would say, maybe necessarily a standout record. We're fans personally, but I know there's a lot of people that are not, did not necessarily have the greatest time in Miami. But this really feels like for the first time, maybe since Caleb Porter came to Portland and John Spencer left, and it was that 2012 season was pretty dire. That there was a lack of identity, and it kind of got to that point with Gio that we kind of just seemed like we just lost the recipe. And Caleb Porter coming in, very strong, play. playing with the old possession with purpose.
Yeah.
It was just trying to, kind of like this thought, and it was definitely you could really see that, and it really, kind of set the Timbers on a trajectory, arguably, really into the early Geo days. It took a lot of that team over from Caleb Porter, and it just seems now that we're kind of at this crossroads of what is this team going to look like, and it just seemed like there were times defensively it was bad last year, just in general, but even attacking wise, even in previous Geo years, particularly earlier in the season, you get this kind of stagnation in attack. Just a lot of not running off the ball, just a lot of very slow buildup, or then you just have to go and straight to try and go speed for a counterattack. But I think, I really want to see what Phil Neville's going to do here. He's already talked about the, flexing tactically, playing different formations. We're, hinting at a back three. I think he went back three and back four against NYCFC in preseason the other day. So, but I think that's a big thing. I think that, we'll get to kind of where we think the team's going to finish, but I think it's big for the Timbers at this point in time to really, kind of figure out what this team wants to look like. And I think that we've missed the playoffs 2 years running, first time since 2012 in that John Spencer era. We got to do something positive, and so I think that is a big thing. So I think it's the results, but also playing some good football. I think that's the other part of this as well. It's not going to be just to get good results, but having those memorable derby wins. If we don't necessarily finish well, there has to be reason to believe we are going to do well in the years to come. We talked about the youth in this team, and I think there's a lot of that it might take a little bit of time. But I think that, that identity and being able to get results and fans, I think is the big, not, I would say, specific question, but kind of more higher level philosophical question for me.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And that's exactly what we're looking for. Just big, vague, and doesn't need to be answered, but make somebody think. I love it.
I'm going to jump in really quick. I have a separate question.
I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Please go on.
No, it's okay. My question is more, it's less philosophical. It's going to be able to be measured. Can the Timbers figure out how to defend set pieces? They were one of the worst set piece defensive teams in the league last year. There were so many games that we would just turn to each other and be like, this is corner, this is going. So I think that's the other piece of this, and it really maybe comes to the identity piece. Can the Timbers figure it out? Set piece defense system setup, whatever it needs to be. We've seen them try zone. We've seen them try man marking. Like, they can't figure it. So if they can figure that out, I hope that Phil can figure that piece out. I think the sky's the limit, but that has to be asked.
Definitely a fair one as well, and that's something to keep an eye on throughout the year. I mean, set pieces win games, right? You talk about that a lot when you're trying to coach any level, right? If you're gonna win, you got to be strong on set pieces. So definitely something good to watch. Connor, your question.
My question, also another one that's gonna most likely be answered at some point this season, but what are they gonna do with the open DP spots? I feel like in MLS 4.0, you just can't get away with not using your DP spots anymore, and especially when you've got two open. Like, that's just, it just feels like so much is being left at the door when you've got two spots open, and I definitely don't think that they should be in a situation where they should rush and mess it up, but at least by like the summer, I feel like the team should do something with it. At the very least, I feel like they should do something similar to what Chicago did, where you just bring somebody on loan on a DP contract just to fill out the last half of the season, and then they leave, you get that spot back, you could retry again in the winter. But I hate when teams leave their DP spots open. I think it's just a really golden opportunity for teams to really build and get a game changer there. And especially with this Portland team, there's so much good, like GAM, whatever level talent on this team, that a couple more DPs that hit on this team, and I seriously think we're looking at a team that's challenging at the top of the Western Conference, let alone probably challenging at the top of the entire league.
That's such an Atlanta question. You wouldn't last a day in Red Bull land.
That's right. We strive for MLS Cups, not mediocrity.
Mediocrity. Tell it to the Three Shields, buddy.
Show me your cup.
Great. We're gonna go down this conversation. I'll just make mine quick because mine was very, very similar to Aaron's there. In can Phil Neville get this right? Right. He was not great to very bad at Miami, depending on the way you look at it. And this is a relatively strong Portland side, all things considered. So there's not really the excuse of talent, right? And even in Miami, there wasn't. I mean, you could make the argument because the players that they brought in weren't that great anyway, regardless of their name and stature. I don't think he can lean on this team, even with only one DP right now. I don't think he can lean on that because I think all across the board, like Connor mentioned, the GAM TAM level signings are still very good, very strong. So, I expect them to fill at least one more spot, but can he rebound out of this poor Miami stint and get this right? Because as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of questions up in the air about him. I mean, I thought he was a good hire. I thought he needed just a fresh start. I thought being in Miami with his good buddy David up in the box, I thought that wasn't a good place for him as a professional, right? I think it's tough to do that when you got your buddy on your back and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, we're doing it, right? So I think here now that it's his own thing, I think it's a good spot for him. Our friend Tommy Scoops was on the show for episode 200, and he loved the signing. So there's a lot of people who like it, but you're right. There's a lot of question marks behind it too. And then I think there's only one thing that we got to do, and that's we got to make a prediction here, right? At the end of the season, where is Portland finishing in the Western Conference?
All right. And this is consensus, I think.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. So I think, assuming the roster is as it is, we're kind of assuming there's probably going to be at least a DP signing. I have the Timbers coming fourth in the West on 53 points. And essentially that's going to come strictly from them improving on the defensive side. So getting closer to about 40 goals allowed compared to, I think it's like 57 or 58 last season, if not more. If they can get to that point, they'll be top 10 in the league in defense. And I think the offense we have is good enough to get us to where we need to go, even if it's just the top half of the league. I think really the defensive piece was such a huge overhaul. Assuming it's not going to be super taxing to the offense, I think 53 points is pretty attainable for this team. Any other thoughts, Aaron?
No, I mean, I think you said a lot last year that even though the team at times going forward was a bit anemic, that they scored enough goals, to have won games, and just threw games away defensively. And I think, if they go plus 10 differential, score 50, let in 40, they're gonna do well. I mean, they at least fourth. Yeah, I was gonna say fifth or seventh with a stretch goal of getting top four, but I can get on board with fourth and 53 points.
Yeah, love it. You guys were 58 goals conceded last year. That's one less than Wooden Spoon Toronto FC, and shockingly, 9 less than LA, because I guess LA forgot that defense matters, and
MLS 4.0. You don't need defense. Just score more goals than the other team.
And they didn't do anything to make it better, by the way. So that'll be an interesting one. But Connor, where do you got them?
I'm in a similar mindset. I've got them, I think, 4-7. Definitely a playoff team. Probably more likely towards the 4-5 side of that range. But I mean, the more I kind of look into it, the more I'm getting sold on the Neville signing. I think people are probably just going to solely focus on that 2023 half season stint where Miami were terrible. And I think some of it is probably his coaching, but I think a lot of it also was just that team was really banged up. I mean, they were losing like key midfielder after key midfielder, and he just didn't have a lot to work with. But in 2022, let's not forget that he did a really good job with that team, like overachieved what many people were expecting, coming off of the sanctions, really young team rebuilding, and he got them into the playoffs, and not like the playoff system we have now where 9 teams make it. He got them into top 6 spot in the East. It was a great achievement. So I think there's potential with Neville in charge. It's a really solid team put together. I just think, and I think Portland will do something with their DP spots. And when they do, I think it could change things and certainly make them a dangerous team coming into MLS Cup. But I think without it for now, maybe it's a little bit of a slower start to the season, but still, I think it's a really solid team, probably 4-5 in the Western Conference.
I'm gonna give some defense to Phil Neville here. So I've watched a lot of football in my life at a lot of different levels. That Inter Miami team for the first half of 2023 was without a doubt the worst professional soccer team I've ever seen in my life. And and it has nothing to do with, like, they could not physically put passes together. Like, you can't coach that. You cannot sit there and be like, hey guys, we're going to try and build out of the back and possess through a high press, or we're going to set a low block, when you can't have players put two passes together or their first touch goes 7 yards away. Like, you can't do it. So a lot of people who are like dogging on him, like, I get it. Like, the record looks really bad, but if you watched a single game, you would have known that this team is just the players on that team were terrible. So again, I think he's got a good set here. I'm really happy with the goalkeeper situation. The center backs are solid. I like their 6s, their 8s, their 10s are all relatively strong in relation to the league. Their wide players are also pretty good. I think Mora's solid, but I think their position will depend on his repeatability, for lack of a better term, his how many times he can do the same, get it right. Consistency. Yep, that's the word I'm looking for. How consistent he can be, and then also his health, right? So if Mora's in form and healthy the whole year, I've got him 4-5, just like Connor does. If not, I can see them 6-7. But absolutely a playoff team, and I think the play-in game would be an underachieving season. Personally, I think if you're in that 8-9 range, just sneaking in, I think it's been a poor season.
Now that you said that, we're definitely coming outside. Yeah, we're coming outside. Because Timbers love this point. That's like almost like our tradition to do this point. So now that we've got that out there, that'll be good.
Yeah, I know it was like that last few games, last game of the season last year. We've blown it last couple, like decision day. And last year we had a chance to get a result against Houston, and we're hosting an exchange student from Netherlands this year. It's a high school student. And it was like we finished it, the players are doing the lap and whatnot, and I was just like no, like we got to stay for this. I'm like, you got to remember how much this hurt. You get beat 3-0 when you had, like, these are my two little boys. I got a 5 and a 9-year-old. I'm like, you remember this? You remember how this feels? Makes you a real Timbers fan. A lot of pain. So yeah.
I'll tell you, my predictions have never really caused too much issue, except Kip Keller's career basically ended because I said he was going to be really good last year. Red Bull barely snuck into the playoffs when I said they were going to finish second. Anything else that I've done really, really bad? Probably.
I mean, you put Toronto in the playoffs. That was a pretty bad
don't
one.
get me started on Toronto in the playoffs. I had Toronto like 14th last year, and this guy below me was like, you have to put him in the playoffs. They're going to be great. What do? Win the wooden spoon. Anyways, we'll go down that path another time. But I wanted to thank you guys both, Aaron and Scotty, for being here today to talk the Portland Timbers. This was a ton of fun. I had a great time with you guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah. So we want to give you some time to plug your links and let them know where to find you. Let our listeners know. So go right ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we're on Twitter. I wasn't ready for that. Sorry. Yeah. So we're on Twitter at Out of Roses. Yeah, we're Twitter. We're on Reddit. Well, you post from Reddit.
Yeah. I mean, generally for social media, we might do an Instagram at some point. For the most part, you can get our podcasts just about everywhere. They can get podcasts, so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the fun stuff. We also have a website. It's outroses.com. We will post links to the podcast, sometimes some articles and editorials on there when we get time. And you can also just find links to all the other stuff there as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, go check them out. Make sure you let them know you came from us. And if you're here from Outer Roses listening to us for the first time, you enjoyed our show, make sure you give us a follow as well. We have 29 of these coming out, so with all different guests from all different teams. So if you're curious about what Seattle's thinking, or what the Red Bulls are thinking because you're randomly looking into Eastern Conference team, come check us out and listen to those episodes. And then if you like what we're doing and you want to stick around for the rest of the season, we're going to do weekly episodes on the biggest MLS news, and we're going to give you our takes and opinions. We do an MLS history segment where we go through all of the biggest moments chosen by the fans from MLS history that have made our league what it is. We haven't quite gotten to Portland just yet, but I think we got a couple of those stories coming up. And then we also do like fun trivia games and tic-tac-toes and just things to keep things light and fun and enjoyable. So if that's something you guys want to be a part of and take part, come give us a follow as well. And we'd love to have you. Scotty, Aaron, thanks so much again for being here. Everybody go check out The Outer Roses. Our listeners, we hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.